what they're gonna be in here?
Well, yeah, it's not on YouTube.
Has it started?
No.
Oh. Let's go ahead and call this meeting of the Edgewood Town Council for May 27th, 2020 to order. First item of business will be the Pledge of Allegiance. So find the flag, and I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I salute the flag of the state of New Mexico and the Zia symbol of perfect friendship among united cultures. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the council meeting. Following Pledge of Allegiance, the first item is approval of the agenda. Councilors, I don't have any changes or anything for you tonight, so I'll go ahead and entertain a motion on that.
Mr. Mayor, I'll move to approve this evening's agenda.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve tonight's agenda. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, do you have all of your councilors in attendance?
Yes.
Okay.
Want to do a quick roll call? We've got Councilor Holly in, Councilor Abraham, Councilor Abrams, and Councilor Harmeal are all present. Okay, next item then would be our consent agenda. We've got 2 town council meeting minutes, a court report, police report, and animal control report, all for the month of April. Well, one of them town councils is May 16th. Anyway, councilors, I'll entertain a motion on this one.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda with one change. This is to the minutes of April 22nd on page 5. The date should be changed to read passed, approved, and adopted this 27th day of May 2020 instead of the 13th.
Good catch. 27.
Second.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded to approve tonight's consent agenda. All in favor say aye.
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 Okay. Okay, the next item then is discussion items. First up is public comment. And for the public listening in, if you'll give me your names, I can write them down here so we got a record of you having spoken. Go ahead, whoever's there first.
Chuck Ring.
Anybody else?
Yeah, this is Tom
yeah.
McGill. Tom McGill, I'd like to donate my 2 minutes to Jerry Powers. Thank you.
Okay.
This is Linda Sparling. I'd like to donate my time to Jerry Powers.
Oh, God.
Mr. Mayor, this is Karen Kaiser.
Anybody else?
This is Jerry Powers.
Got you on there already. Okay, if we don't have anybody else, we'll go ahead and start then with Chuck Ring. Go ahead, Mr. Ring.
Thank you, Mayor and Council and public. What has and is happening in Edgewood reminds me of what the Department of Justice, the FBI, and some Democrats have done with their pursuit of President Trump. I cast no aspersions on the FBI as a whole, only on the upper echelon that has been so crooked and has been so diligent in their unlawful pursuit of the president and others in the Trump administration. And then I would like to address Councilor Abraham and Jaramillo. I understand that you two went to Santa Fe and filed a writ of mandamus, and the judge upheld your writ. And what it amounts to, what that does, it's held Edgewood hostage because we're going to pay over $7,000 for this little election that you want to have to pass a manager commission form of government. Could have waited until November and it would have been free. But anyway, all I have to say, what else I have to say is a judge and his edicts are no more holy than that of a pauper. And with that, I'll shut up and hang up. I have nothing else to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Jerry Powers. If I read this right, you've got 6 minutes.
Okay. My comments tonight, I've got a few subjects. The first one is regarding the special election. Before the April 9th meeting, CORE and some of the members and supporters had requested and circulated a petition in order to have an election. Our attorney, Adrian Terry, submitted a letter saying that it was clear that it should be in August. Your own attorney said that was an option, although he came up with an option that was later debunked by the Secretary of State, or she disagreed with that interpretation, that there was no option. So what Mr. Ring said, I believe is off base. It's incorrect that there is no option for November. With regard to the timeline, after the April 9th meeting where you all voted to push it off into November, the Secretary of State came out with a letter on May 1st. She said it was clear. She used really direct and no uncertain terms kind of language that it must be held in August. After that, there was almost a full month went by before the council took action. There was a meeting on May 13th that could have been put on that agenda and the mistake corrected and dealt with. The special election called for August. The meeting was instead canceled. It was not on the May 16th special meeting agenda. So the extraordinary step of getting a judge to order a town council to do a lawful thing that they're required to do, I don't remember in my lifetime in New Mexico. And I am astounded by the resistance of the council to holding this election. I understand that the council the mayor went to the Secretary of State and got clarification that there doesn't have to be an election in November to stand for commissioner. So I suppose that it was an attempt to evade having to stand for election, which I can understand given the fact that people are upset about how the town is being run. But I don't think the resolution is to avoid holding election and being accountable to the people. I think the best solution and highest solution would be to turn about and start listening to the people of Edgewood and what they want, and not marginalizing their input or dissent about the direction that Edgewood should go. I'm grateful to Councilor Jaramillo and Abraham for standing up and having to do the extraordinary step, which is not easy, to ask a judge to order the town to do the right thing. The other comments I have are directed toward two other subjects. One is the waste plant. I've only recently been informed from Tom Miguel, one of our members, with regard to some of the information. It appears that the sewer plant has exceeded the legal limit on certain parameters of NMED by over 1,100 times last November. I don't know of any other contaminant that there is a standard set for by either NMED or EPA that will not kill you is at 1,100 times its legal limit. So there's a definite emergency going on with the sewer plant. And I understand from the reports, and I've seen these reports where the laboratory reports were, the numbers were altered when they were reported to the town council. So when you see numbers that have been altered that are out of range for 2 months in a row, and then there was no reporting for almost 6 months after that, you can't help but come to the conclusion that something is being swept under the rug rather than being brought out into the public. And I'm wondering why the council doesn't use all of its resources in coming out to the public and the other council members, reporting an emergency of this scale, and start trying to do some troubleshooting to fix it. As I understand it, there's a new operator that was hired in January, but there were still no council reports until tonight. And I don't know that there are any real laboratory reports tonight, but there have been no reports since he took over. I understand that those factors that were out of range are still out of range. So I would encourage the town, rather than trying to come up with a way to evade elections, but rather try to figure out a way to solve the real problems of the town. And those are my comments.
Next person up is Karen Kaiser.
Thank you, Mayor Bassett and Council. I called to ask about 2 items that you're going to take action on later this evening. The first is the financial report, and I noticed that there were $32,633 worth of legal fees. Again, $23,000 plus of that went to EPCOR, and I hope that you as a governing body will tell us what in the world you're spending so much money in legal fees on, specifically about EPCOR. Second is the audit that you're going to discuss, and the audit that you just received for fiscal year 2019. I was excited to see that it came in the packet, and I took time to read it. And I do have a degree in accounting, so I'm the kind of nerd that likes to read an audit, but to put it in layperson's terms, it made me sad to read that audit and see that it was a qualified opinion with 8 findings. A good audit, an A+ audit, would be unqualified with 0 findings. So that led me to the state auditor's website, and I looked at all the audits. They're all there for anyone that, like me, wants to read them. And I noticed, Mayor Bassett, that you kind of, when you took office, you inherited an A+ audit. Under Mayor Hill in 2014 and 15, he had unqualified audits with 0 findings. That would be an A+ if it was a test. Your first audit, you had like 2 findings. That would be maybe a B+ even. By the next year, you got 3 findings. Now you're, B-, maybe C+. By 2018, you've got 4 findings. Now you're working your way to a C. I would say this 2019 audit is I find that concerning, and I ask that you turn to Audrey Hadamil, an expert government auditor, for help, because you need it. Thank you.
Okay, that's the end of public comment.
Mayor, I do have an email from Mr. Barella that he would ask me to read. He's got some comments.
Okay.
All right, so Mayor, Council, bear with me. Let me pull up my email real quick. Okay, so this is kind of more addressed for the wastewater, but it's addressed. So Mr. Hall, I'm one to say we're glad to have you here. I've checked out Aqua Environmental and Engineering website and see a list of projects and professional engineers in Salt Lake and Denver. It is encouraging that AES helps rural communities with technical assistance. Recently, I have completed site surveys and situational awareness assignments for 32 clients in the South Central region for TSA and DHS specific to cybersecurity. Past experience as information assurance officer and access professional security colleagues has opened the door to me to explore and gather information protecting the water sector, as public and private utilities have been designated as critical infrastructure. I live here and have been following the issues with the wastewater treatment plant locally. At the same time, I have been following America's Water Infrastructure Act of 2018, which superseded the Bioterrorism Act of 2002. Both federal laws require utilities serving a population of 3,300 or greater to conduct risk assessments and develop emergency response plans. Conclusion, the wastewater treatment plant incompatibility issue at design and startup would have been identified and mitigated if the responsible administration and consulting engineers / NMED conducted the risk assessment as required. The required act with due diligence with regard to integrity instead shortcuts were taken. Now, this administration has inherited this problem and needs professional partnerships with the expertise and performance-based model like AES can provide. We're glad you're here. I have remained silent and on the sidelines until I've reviewed the findings and status report you prepared with and discussing your findings tonight. Per TOE's application for New Mexico Clean Water Revolving Fund, clerk calls out a population served as 3,805 with 52 commercial customers. This fits the criteria for a medium-sized utility, 3,300 greater, recognized by EPA oversight. Heads up, Mr. Hall, I hope I am wrong on this, but according to EPA NPEDS website for states, in 2016 Estancia Basin Regional Water Plant, NMED is unauthorized to administer NPEDS authorization since 2015. This tells me that something is wrong with NM and EPA and NMED, maybe in a timeout. It would not shock me if this is true. Another New Mexico bottom 5 list. In my gathering of information and prior to the notice of violation, listening to comment at council meetings to the wastewater treatment plant operations, better to be backing the SCADA server up than seeing the SCADA repaired on the TOE website. Just figured it was fixed, and then seeing TOE using third-party SCADA hosting. Then the loss of an operator indicators began to pile up. That told me my instincts told me SCADA problems. Your report confirms to me what I suspected in a cyber incident internal or outside intrusion, accidental, intentional, cannot be ruled out. Your report does call out system event alert firewall logs that will run real time and should be stored within the configs on site, off-site, or at SKM hosting. This is considered very high category vulnerability. TOE local administration needs to step up, empower you as AES with the resources needed to get out of the way. No more shortcuts. I've been in your shoes and involved in investigations, and they are not pretty with the Grim Reaper when the Grim Reaper shows up. Mr. Hall, AES, PE. I have spoken publicly at current administration / P&Z once in February 2018, most recently at P&Z November 2019 regarding emergency planning. Emergency planning has been in the quay since 2007 comprehensive plan and now in the 2020 comprehensive plan, and explained by P&Z / mayor that it is on the back burner.
Can't hear you.
Both attempts, sorry, can you hear me now? Both of my attempts have been dismissed. I see that AES can perform risk management. Perhaps your influence and AES performance for rural municipalities can change the course of TOE. Hope that AES can propose planning strategy that can be taken more seriously than my attempts. It takes a community to protect the community. That's the underlying theme in today's uncertain times. Respectful of your skills and qualifications, I applaud your efforts. Eugene Barella.
Is that it?
That's it.
Okay, moving along to matters from the councilors. Councilor Linda Holly. They still can't hear.
That phone went off for whatever reason.
Hang on. Gotta love these glitches.
The number you have dialed is not in service.
Please enter your access code followed by the pound or hash sign. To enable audio controls, please enter your audio PIN.
All right, is that better?
Yes.
There we go.
Okay, I apologize. I did read Mr. Barella's complete email. It is a part of the record, and I will attach it to the next one. The phone was showing here, it was still connected. I have no idea what happened. I apologize.
So, could the public hear the letter?
I don't know. Anyone from the public, could you guys hear anything?
Yes.
They said they did. All right, the next item then is matters from the councilors. Councilor Holly, you go first.
Okay. I wanted to bring to everyone's attention that Santa Fe County is they're distributing meals at no charge to community residents, and that information is on the town's website. It began on Tuesday, May 5th, and will continue until further notice. And so that food distribution is at the Edgewood Fire Station from 3 to 5, only on Tuesdays. And fire station's located at number 1 Municipal Way. I have also received information from First Choice that in collaboration with the Roadrunner Food Bank, they will be starting a food distribution project in Edgewood beginning Wednesday, June 10th. And I don't have any more details than that, but once I get the information, I'll make sure it gets on the town website. So I want to make sure that the community is aware of those two opportunities. Excuse me. And then finally, our librarian, Andrea Corbin, wanted this news to go out far and wide. Beginning next Tuesday, June 2nd, they're going to open up for curbside service. They still won't have the library open to the community. However, you can check out library items either by signing into your library member account from the online library catalog or by phoning your request to a librarian. When your reserved items are ready, you'll receive notification via text, email, or a phone call to pick them up during scheduled curbside service hours. And those dates and times to pick up reserved library materials will be Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday, 11:30 to 12:30, and then 4:30 to 5:30. And again, this begins next week on Tuesday, June 2nd. And those that are interested in the summer reading program, you can do summer reading program pickups, reading tracker pickups and drop-offs, and prize pickups on Thursdays. That starts next week on Thursday, June 4th, and the times for that will be 10:30 to noon until July 30th. Finally, turning in library materials is easy. There's a drop-off box in front of the building. But when you do the curbside pickup, you'll enter as if you're going to the town offices off of 344. You'll drive along the sidewalk in front of the town office, and just before you get to the south, the old school building, the south building, that's where the pickup location will be. The librarian will meet you wearing her protective gear, and you're to stay in your cars. So it should be real quick, pick up, drop off, and you would exit onto Dinkle. So wanted to make sure everybody who wants to itching to get some new books to read, here's your opportunity starting next week. That's all.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Abraham.
I wanted to mention too that MESD is still doing their lunch distributions for kids during the week as another resource of food. I guess my thing that I'm going to talk about tonight is the fact that I did file a writ of mandamus to make sure that the citizens' voices were heard. I did not come up with this on my own. This was a certified petition that came from our public that the Secretary of State set guidelines for, and I just wanted to make sure as a member of the governing body that those guidelines were followed. So this is not something that I was excited to do or something that I ever thought I would have to do, but it is something that I felt needed to be done, and I won't apologize for it. Thank you.
Councilor Armijo.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining on Facebook and those who called in. I always appreciate hearing from you. Councilor Hawley, thank you for the great detailed information. I also wanted to thank Andrea. I think that she's being innovative and doing a great job, and I'm glad that you gave people the details on the library and food services as well. I know I was going to mention MESD, so that's great. There's still plenty of resources out there for people who may need it. And also, I know there's a lot of volunteers that if there's shut-ins or anyone who may need assistance, please call the town or one of the churches, and I'm sure that be very willing to help. I wanted to respond to a couple of the comments here. I know Jerry mentioned the sewer, and I think that we'll get into that report a little later, and I will be able to ask questions, hopefully, of our new operator at that time. I did send an emergency email, you know, just to the administration and NMED sort of, or not sort of, but expressing my grave concerns with these allegations of what looks to be fraud, number one, but more importantly, what looks to be something very serious for our public health. And so I'm hoping, Mayor and administration, to have word from you on that very soon. That kind of ties into what had to happen with the writ of mandamus. You know, when there's very important deadlines and things that must be followed, and when you're talking about the public here, we have to follow the law. And the lack of communication has really been disappointing. And so even that I sent these couple of emails on this sewer issue and have had zero communication, except for Carla did let us know we would be having the report tonight. Well, if I don't know how it's going to be addressed, and I'm part of the governing body and I'm responsible for employees who could get sick and pass away, and I'm responsible as the governing body member for the public who's walking on these roads, you know, I take that extremely seriously. And so if it isn't addressed, my question is, okay, do I have to go to OSHA? Do I have to go to the EPA? If I'm not getting communication, what do you do as a governing body member, right? So I just wanted to respond to Jerry that yes, you used the word emergency, and I already used the word emergency as well, because I think it is very serious. If reports were falsified, that is absolutely unacceptable. So then on to the other topic of the writ of mandamus. With former Councilor Ring's comments, I agree that this is really sad and not something that you want to see. I just want to remind you that judges don't make the law. They merely give their opinion and enforce the law, right? And so the law was already there. It was just a delay and a refusal to address it for about a month, a little over a month. And even after repeated communications from myself and Councilor Abraham that were ignored. and even instructions, straight up instruction from Secretary of State, where there was no question as to what the town was supposed to do. So that's my answer to you on that. This wasn't something that was just, come up suddenly. This was something that had been ignored for a very long time and was the law. I am pleased to report then that the special election will be August 24th. We passed that resolution, I think it was yesterday morning. And so, whichever way that goes, at least, the public validly did the petition, and the public is going to validly get to vote on it. And we'll see what the townspeople want. I did, after reading the minutes in this packet, it just reminded me of the meeting that we had on that. And I wanted to just kind of remind everyone about our parliamentary procedures and how we were trained on that. And we don't start discussion until we have a motion and a second. Once you have a motion and a second, you may have secondary motions and seconds. And nothing I can find says that you can have a motion and a second die for lack of majority in the middle of while you're discussing these things. So if the clerk, if you wouldn't mind getting me an answer on that, the municipal league, but reading it in the minutes reminded me that I don't think you can just have a die for lack of majority. You can have die for lack of a second. But anyway, so that's just one thing that I wanted to add there. And I think, one last thing, I wanted to thank the Edgewood Chamber of Commerce. I think Linda and all of them are doing a fantastic job with communication, webinars, and getting the word out, and information and supporting. I just encourage everyone to continue to support our small businesses during this very difficult shutdown time, and hope that things can get back opened up soon. And the rest of my questions I will defer till later as they come up on the agenda. Thank you.
Councilor Abrams.
Well, here we are in, what is it, month 2 or is it month 3 of our pandemic? I am anxiously anticipating the special session in Santa Fe to get going here in the middle of next month. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens, both to our community, to education, to how the state is going to manage a major downturn in the economy. I think that's going to have a major effect on both the town of Edgewood as well as the major effect that it's having on many, many, if not all of its residents currently. I think that the interesting events and the bickering that we have had over the opinions of lawyers on the law is a distraction on the reality that we are going to have to deal with some very, very, very serious things in the next probably 12 to 24 months. One of those things could possibly be the clawback of 62% of our budget. So if anybody out there is listening and is going to pay attention to that, I think they all should be very, 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 very worried. And I'm not saying you shouldn't be worried about COVID, but I am saying you should be worried about the effects of it and the long range effects of it that we're going to see over the next couple of years. I don't think you're going to see a big clawback after this special session. You'll see something relatively minor. I already know that the proposals for raises for educators are going to go away. I also know that between 5 and 25% of the state's higher ed budget are being very, very carefully scrutinized. So if that has any pertinence whatsoever to our municipal budget, then the hold harmless is definitely out there. If that goes away, it's going to be very, very difficult to pay for elections. It's going to be very difficult to pay for roads. It's going to be very difficult to pay for anything. And without diversifying our economy in this town, we're in the same boat that the state is in. Without diversifying its economy, it's dependent upon oil and gas revenues that are in the tank right now. Yeah, they've come back a little bit. Yeah, the stock market has come back a little bit, but it's not going to float our boat. There's an awful lot of stuff that we should be doing or could be doing. Unfortunately, the distractions are what they are. And with that, I'll hand it to you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor. Next item then is matters from the clerk treasurer, Mr. Torres.
Mayor, Council. Okay, so I just wanted to let you know we did our bids, and the apparent low bid was TLC Company for the concrete slab at the wastewater treatment plant. Their bid came in at $191,886.76. So currently, it's at NMED for concurrence and review. Once they approve of that, we hope to be under construction with the concrete pad early next month sometime, just once again pending that approval. Also with respect to NMED, we've submitted the permit application to NMED and started that process. So we'll keep you up to date as we know more with that. This next item, so kind of concerning today. So we were getting a bunch of calls from residents talking about the equestrian center, and what we've been doing as we get the information, as we get the phone calls, we'll refer them to Santa Fe County, and some people came and said, well, we're getting the runaround. Santa Fe County says it's yours. You say it's Santa Fe County's. No one's accepting responsibility. But the real disturbing one was that someone came in and said, or someone called in and said that Santa Fe County wasn't going to open up until Edgewood accepts the maintenance agreement. So we called Santa Fe County. We actually spoke to Chris Barella from Public Works, asked them what the deal was and what are they telling people that call. What he told me that the facility is closed strictly because of COVID-19, because of the health order on public gathering, and they have no way to enforce that right now. So that is why that facility is closed. As soon as the governor changes restrictions, they will reevaluate opening the facility. So that one, like I said, was kind of disturbing, the phone calls we received earlier today. Want to let everyone know early voting is still continues today until Saturday 30th, and then after that in-person voting will be here on June 2nd. We also are getting a lot of calls about people asking if they can turn in their absentee ballot, and they absolutely can. If they just bring in their absentee ballot here, they can put it in a bin, and their vote will be counted. They've had concerns about, just it took so long to get their ballot, they don't want it to take so long to get back and their vote not be counted. So if they have that concern, they can come drop it off during the early voting hours, and they will put it in a bin, and their vote will be counted. As some of you might have noticed, our parks and open space facilities are now open. We moved the benches and tables to kind of comply with the social distancing requirements. We also, just let everyone know that we do have the free Wi-Fi available for those who need internet service here in front of Town Hall and at Venus Park. So that service is available. The community center and library will still remain closed, as Councilor Hawley did mention earlier, that we will have curbside distribution beginning June 2nd. We are open by appointment here at Town Hall. Once again, we just want to make sure we're staying in compliance with the health order. And that's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Torres. Matters from the mayor, I got a few things tonight. Some of them have already been expressed, but anyway, Let me go down through here. First one is our Safe Cities designation. We heard from Sage Singleton here this last week, and it says, congratulations again on being named one of Wise's 20 safest cities in New Mexico for 2020. Here are a few quick friendly reminders. Blah, blah. Anyway, is this the one that's got the ranking on it? Or I think we were number 9 this year. But anyway, that's kudos to Chief and everybody in town for looking after one another and doing a good job. We're still one of the top 10 cities. Yeah, Edgewood ranked number 9 among New Mexico's 20 safest, so we're still a top 10. Speaks well for all of us, for Chief, for the force, and everybody. Kudos. The next item then, Edgewood 7 has been chip sealed and is awaiting new striping. It runs all the way from the Mormon Church up over the hill and down to the county line there. I think it was a double penetration, and they're pretty much done with it. It just lacks the striping. Also, the police department and the community center annex area are all now hooked into the town sewer system. They haven't quite finished it up out there, but the work is basically completed. The stuff's in the ground. They're just working to kind of wrap up the job. So that gives us those areas there hooked into that new line. Kind of following what Juan and what Councilor Abrams had talked about, our capital outlay for the Church Street paving has been frozen. At the special session coming up in June, we're going to try to unfreeze it. We came within just a matter of maybe a day or two or something of having all that in place when the order came down to freeze everything. Now the flip side to that is the outlays for the improvements at the wastewater plant. It was frozen, then unfrozen. So work down there, and I believe that's because it's considered vital infrastructure or whatever. The work going on down there can continue. Another item, this past week, we honored the graduating seniors from both Moriarty and from EBCA. Their names were placed up on our electric sign over there by Chili Hills, and we gave a shout out to each one of them individually. And on behalf of the town of Edgewood, I'd like to congratulate all the seniors this year. I know the year didn't end the way they wanted it to, but we do wish all of you the best in all your years ahead, and good luck in all your endeavors. Next, we want to thank Scott McCall and Clay and Diana Williams and Linda Burke from the Chamber for their participation in our business roundtable discussion. Their input that day was invaluable, and it helped us when we wrote our letter to the governor, pleading with him to basically move to lift those restrictions as soon as they reasonably could. And that was just a good day's visit with all of them, and that, I think, helped a lot. As I believe Councilor Holly's mentioned it, Santa Fe County is continuing with the free meal distribution each Tuesday over here at the fire station. That's from 3 to 5, and everybody's welcome. Yeah, that involves the World Central Kitchen, the community college. There's a whole lot of them. And this is on the website, I believe, Councilor Holly, you said?
Yes, the Santa Fe County distribution is.
Yeah. And as Councilor Abraham mentioned, MESD is also offering free meals for children ages 1 to 18. And that is also up on the website. You can go look at it. It begins May 26th, yesterday, and ends on July 30th. And there's breakfast times of 8 to 9:30 and lunch times of 11 to 1. And all meal service will be curbside. So please remain in the vehicle when you come by to pick it up. Up here, it's showing Edgewood Middle School, Monday through Fridays. Like I say, the breakfast is 8 to 9:30, and the lunch times are 11 to 1. Lastly, I want to thank Leota Harriman and the Independent. Got to give a shout out for coming out and broadcasting our meetings on Facebook. Thank you, Leota and the Independent. Another item of to acknowledge here tonight, and sort of the passings. Norton Henninger, this was his last week with the town. And we hope to get him back in here when the Corona stuff passes and give him maybe a plaque or something in honor of his years of service here. But we'll let everybody know when we have that lined up. Right now it's tough to get him in here. We've got 5 people in here and we've already hit our limit. About the only thing I can say to some of these earlier comments is basically, as far as that election, we did try to hook up with the Secretary of State all through March and into April and had no luck getting it. And I believe you all have seen the letter where they apologized for the oversight on their part. If they had given us the guidance and stuff that we sought from them at that time, we may have handled it different on April 9th. Didn't happen that way. They themselves told us, well, in the absence of that, turn to your legal, which we did. We did all that. And then here comes the letter on May 1st. So again, back to legal, figure out, okay, how do we want to respond to this? And they gave us their opinion, but I wanted to speak to the Secretary of State's office myself and get some more clarification that I didn't think was in that letter there. It all took time. Our working plan was to have dealt with that issue here tonight at this meeting, but the mandamus came through, so we dealt with it, and the timetable it fit that. There's no effort to try to hide anything or do anything weird. It's just that's the way the stuff is moving these days. And for anybody that would suggest otherwise, they're just flat wrong. I think that's about all I've got tonight for matters from the mayor. So I believe we'll move on to the next item. And Mr. Torres, do you have our guests?
Yeah, Mayor.
Larry's on there, I can see that.
We have Larry, Todd Burt, and Donzel Worthington from Bohannon, Houston as well.
I see Larry Hall. Evening, Larry, how are you? Can you hear us?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yep, you're coming through good.
Great.
Todd Burt as well.
Todd, are you there also?
Good evening. How's everybody today?
And Donzel Worthington.
And Donzel Worthington, are you there also?
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, Mayor, Council, and
Okay, so councilors, we've got Larry Hall, we've got Donzel Worthington and Todd Burt. Donzel and Todd are here from BHI. They're the ones handling the engineering on the improvements out there. Larry is our hired operator. And let's see here. Larry, I guess you've got the floor. You've got a report here. You want to take us through that?
Yes. Sure. Apologize a little bit right before getting on. I started having some computer issues, so I had to reboot my computer. Just bear with me a minute here if I can get that up.
It's the joys of these computer meetings.
Yeah, well, it was working fine. I had everything up, and then my internet stopped working. Isn't that how it goes?
Something like that. Fine picture of your chest. You want to move down so we can see your face?
Sure.
All right.
All right, it's coming up. So I just wanted to kind of give an overview of the wastewater plant as far as since I've been involved with it, and some of the things that I found and things that we've done and things that we still have left to do. It's certainly not meant to be all-inclusive, but just kind of give a little bit of a general overview of the plant. I guess you want me just to walk through this then, Mayor?
However we've got your report, so if you want to just go through it and elaborate on the stuff you've put in here.
Okay. So like the report says, my initial visit to the plant was the week of January 13th. And I had several issues that caused me concern with the plant. I've listed a few of them here. The influent flow meter, the readings that had been taken previously on that meter were not the correct readings, I determined. Apparently it was thought that the meter was bad and needed to be replaced. I feel like the meter is working fine now that we're taking the correct readings. The influent and effluent are matching closely. There was a new effluent sampler on site, but it was not working. Since then, we have been able to get that sampler up and working. We've tied it into the SCADA, which is the telemetry portion of the plant to automatically run that sampler. There's still some issues with the air monitor, the Headworks gas ventilator system. Mike Garcia had done some work previous to me coming out there. There's still more to be done there. The screens are a big problem at the plant right now, and I know that's on the list. The engineers are working on getting replacement screens out there. I did some stuff with the permeate pumps to try to better utilize the membranes and increase the longevity of the membranes. The UV system, which was the original disinfection system for the plant, does not work. I was told that it hadn't worked in quite some time. It's imperative that the plant have a good working disinfection system to disinfect the fecal coliform leaving the plant. Worked with Carla and Juan to procure a pump, which we have installed to inject a liquid sodium hypochlorite solution. The liquid sodium hypochlorite is a fairly low strength liquid bleach. It's not gas chlorine. It's what we're using there is about 10% chlorine. Common bleach that you would buy in the store is somewhere around 3.5%. So it's quite stronger than common bleach, but it's pretty safe, and it's used pretty widespread as a disinfectant for treatment plants as well as drinking water systems. A new turbidity meter had been installed when I arrived. It was not reading and recording to the SCADA system. Since I arrived, we have been able to get that tied into the SCADA and up and working. Had extensive issues with the crane that is now functional. There were a lot of confusion, and it's appeared to me in the past with regard to E. coli versus fecal coliform sampling. I was able to speak with someone at NMED and clear that up, and we are now having to take our fecal coliforms to a lab in Alamogordo. Unfortunately, that is the closest lab that I was able to find that can actually test for fecal coliform. The alternate disposal method, aka the sprinkler system, that was almost up and running when I had arrived. So I can't take really any credit for it other than to report that it is up and functional now, and we have used that disposal system to reduce the level in the impoundment, the storage pond, to stay within the permit limits with regard to freeboard requirements. Other issues I found in the permit were signage. We've installed additional signage. The impervious surface for the dewatered sludge, aka the concrete pad, this is in the works, and Ted or Donzel could speak on that more if you want. We padlocked the reuse hydrants throughout Edgewood, just as a assurance that we could control the reuse water that was being pulled out of them. We've have repaired and or installed additional fencing around the wastewater treatment plant and the disposal area. And then I have been working on getting the plant working properly and able to meet permit, specifically with regard to fecal coliform, which I mentioned. We're taking care of that with the liquid sodium hypochlorite addition. The BOD and turbidities are a direct result of the membranes. Once we were able to get the crane up and functional, which took quite some time, we immediately pulled 2 of the 3 cassettes, and we replaced all of the plates in the cassettes. So now we have 2 brand new cassettes with new plates out of 3. The third one's offline. We did receive additional plates a couple of weeks ago, and last time I talked to Mike Garcia, he almost had all of the plates put in the cassette. So we will be installing that additional 3rd cassette soon. And then there's other issues that I mentioned in there. There's also issues that aren't a part of this report. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at it or read it, but if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay, you want to hear from Todd Burt and Donzel Worthington, so you can kind of have them in the conversation too at the same time. Todd, why don't you go ahead and give us an update on what your firm's doing out there?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So Bohannon Houston's been working on the plant for quite some time now, and we've finished the basis of design report. With that, we also completed the design of the concrete holding pad. One previously mentioned that we did receive bids on that about, I think it was last week, and have submitted a recommendation of award to proceed with that, the lowest bidder on that project, and are waiting on NMED approval for that. So we expect to be in construction on that activity here in the next, hopefully 30 to 45 days at the most. In addition to that, we're also working on design of the membrane dip tank, which I know is a piece that Larry is very interested in getting onto the facility in order to maintain the membranes to a much greater extent. We're also looking at some other improvements inside the facility for H2S generation, along with a package for automation of the blowers, and then also SCADA improvements to help with the operations of the facility to control things, monitor things a little bit better, and to automate the facility even more than it is now. So in a nutshell, that's where we're at right now.
Donzel, do you have anything to add?
Mr. Mayor, council and staff, I think that's pretty much been covered. I just think if you recall back, the improvements at the plant were driven somewhat by funding and also the notice of violation. And the number one item to address, I think, was the impervious barrier for the system as far as the concrete slab, we call it, drying beds for sludge or
material that could be used for composting or whatever on that end. And as Mr. Burt said, the bids are been received. We'll see a notice of award move into construction on that in the very near future. And as that happens, that should address the NOV related to that item. That was one of the highest priorities, and that one got moved to the forefront. And as the other funding's coming available and more work has been done on the plant, and along with the discharge permit and the screens, which are one of the key issues as well, as Mr. Burt said, that's underway at this point, trying to move that forward as quickly as possible to procure new screens to protect the membranes at the plant and help it to meet the effluent requirements. Thank you.
Okay, so I've got a thing here from Eugene Barella sent in, and he's got just a couple of quick questions here. I'll direct them to you, Larry, but describe the difference between MPDES permit and Edgewood's discharge permit issued by NMED.
Well, in general, NPDES permit is part of the national, it's part of the Clean Water Act, so it's a federal permit that deals with the National Pollution Discharge Elimination System, specifically dealing with point source discharges to bodies of water, rivers, lakes, streams, that type of thing. The groundwater permit that Edgewood has that is overseen by the New Mexico Environment Department is specifically dealing with the protection of groundwater as opposed to navigable federal waterways.
Right.
And then in terms of the E. coli versus fecal coliform, I think that's was kind of the confusion. From what I've been able to learn, the NPDES permits within New Mexico all went to a E. coli testing format, as opposed to the groundwater permits, which I was told are still supposed to be the fecal coliform. But I think that's part of the confusion.
Okay. The other question is, can you describe SCADA Technologies and ICS and what they do inside the plant?
Well, the SCADA is really a way for us to interact and control and see the plant remotely, and operate the plant remotely. So I can get on and see the Edgewood plant, see the processes, the flows, the relevant data at the plant, and I can turn pumps on and off. I can see the flow rates that came in yesterday. I can watch pressures and I can make changes. So it really allows you to operate a plant remotely. I have several plants that I operate remotely. I look at these SCADA, these plants multiple times a day. So it's really an important tool, and it allows for control and oversight of the plant remotely.
Okay. Council have any questions for Mr. Hall?
Mr. Hall, I have some questions, and maybe it's not to you, maybe it's to Mr. Worthington or one of the others. You've mentioned a lot of repairs here, upgrades, things that have been done recently and things that need to be done. Do we have any cost estimates of what we're looking at just to fix the things that are currently wrong? And then are we addressing the asset management, like replacement parts that need to be replaced in the next few years?
With regard to the asset management, that is certainly an important part of the plant. I had a conversation with Juan a couple weeks ago regarding specifically the membranes and the plates, and setting up a sinking fund to take care of those needs specifically for the membrane plates. That's pretty typical in a membrane plant because the membranes are the heart of the plant, if you will, and they can be quite costly. With regard to the cost of other stuff to repair, a lot of the items that we've been able to do, such as the putting in the liquid sodium hypochlorite system, for example, we were able to procure a pump relatively inexpensively because I have put these in at multiple facilities. I was able to put this in, get it up and running, use the telemetry, the SCADA people to program this, and I was able to land the wires. So a lot of the stuff that we've done is stuff that I see that is high priority, that needs to be addressed as soon as possible, and we've been able to do it really inexpensively, and so we're able to get a really good bang for your buck, if you will. Some of the other bigger projects, probably not the best person to speak on, like the pad and the screen. I know that Todd and Donzel have done the work on that, so I'll let them speak to that.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Yeah, I can speak to what was included for the basis of design report and the improvements that we've talked about that are under design. And as mentioned, the concrete pad is already done. That was right about $191,000. Sherry, is there specific items you're interested in, or would you like me to just go through all of them?
I'm kind of just looking at overall cost. I don't know if you heard Councilor Abrams, but our budget may be in dire distress in the next few years. Okay. And while we need to address these issues, we need to prepare for that. And so we kind of need some kind of cost guideline estimates, what has to be done first so that we can prioritize, and then, what kind of replacement costs are we looking for and stuff like that. So that's kind of where I'm going with this is how are we going to budget for these things in the next few years in a very difficult financial period.
Okay, well, let me run through the 3-4 items that are under design, and then what might also be helpful is if Donzel could talk about the current funding that is in place and some of the funding options that have been pursued in the past too. Does that sound good, Donzel? Yes, okay. So the first one, probably the most important improvement at the plant, is the replacement of the fine screens. They've been and certainly reached their age limit at this point. And so the cost for the replacement of the fine screens is right about $700,000. Okay, it is definitely the most expensive project that is being incorporated into the facility at this point. The next project that we are under design on is the membrane cleaning tank, which again, this is really more for operation and maintenance of the membranes. That's at a much lower cost at $64,000. And I'm rounding all the numbers up just to keep things in the right ballpark. The blower system modifications to automate the facility is about $35,000. And then the final one for the SCADA improvements is an additional $91,000. So when you consider all of those together at this point, the total cost of the 4 projects is right about $900,000. Okay. We do include contingency on those estimates because we are aware that sometimes things do change, schedules may slip, or just even the construction economy may change as we get these things out to bid. But right now, the total project cost again is and if you're looking for an exact number, we estimated $893,000 for the improvements that I just mentioned. So I know Donzel's been working very closely with the town on some of the funding they have and other funding opportunities that might be available in the future. So I think, Donzel, if you wouldn't mind giving an overview on those sorts of items too.
Okay, and again, Donzel Worthington. It's and it really with Bohanna Houston has been involved just in most recent months on this project, and I really got to hand it to the town staff, the mayor, and Mr. Torres and Ms. Salazar have been very successful on the funding pursuits to date on this. We do a lot of funding assistance for communities we work with, but we have not had to do a lot or done a lot with Edgewood since they've been successful already acquiring the Clean Water State Revolving Fund loan grant combination that's currently being used for the improvements at the wastewater plant. And in addition, the capital outlay, which actually for last year's was general fund, but since it is wastewater fund, it was not frozen 2 or 3 weeks ago when we went through the scare of all of the general fund capital outlays from 19 FY were frozen. This year, the 20s were severance tax bonds, were STBs instead. So they had a $900,000 grant from the capital outlay, and then also what is it? I think Mr. Torres, $630,000, I believe, grant also.
I think it was approximately 625,000. It was a kind of an odd number. It wasn't really even, like 625 something, almost 626,000.
Right. And so that funding is in place right now that covers what was identified by Mr. Byrd on the capital projects that are addressing the critical issues and the priority issues coming up related to notice violation and compliance issues. And so at the moment, the funding is in place. Now, we understand in the economic situation we're in, it's real interesting times, not knowing when funds could get reverted or get called back. So we've been working closely and aggressively to try and move those projects forward to get the money committed and get notice of obligations in place, working with NMED representative Sarah Roten that's been working closely with the town in order to move that forward and ensure that money is in place and the projects are obligated before there's another effort to pull back funds to ensure that these priority projects as identified will have the funding kept in place to accomplish those over the next, I guess that's about a 2-year window roughly on the funding we just talked about. I know also we had talked recently, we were contacted by representatives from both the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund at the state level and the Clean Water State Revolving Fund to look for projects that we can identify with potential budgets and project descriptions that would be beneficial to the town should there be an infusion of federal money, stimulus cash come into the community. And the state has lobbyists at the NDC that look for those to identify it. And we were told the concern was by the APA that if they did through any stimulus packages, which at this time is only discussion, we'll see if that comes to pass. But if something happens there to ensure that there was adequate projects at the state ready to spend that money, so federal monies for economic development as well as infrastructure projects would not go unspent. And at that point, and I know that the city staff put those projects in on the wastewater system as a priority too for consideration of additional grant dollars potentially come into town to help them comply and do improvements to the wastewater treatment plant. And at that point, so that's, I guess, in kind of a nutshell, but the town has been very successful at acquiring funding, generally grant funding, to do these projects to date. I've been impressed with what we've seen and the money available for these projects.
Okay, so you don't foresee right now budget being a huge issue to keep our plant up and running?
Am I still on? I didn't know if I was muted or not. I mean, that's not in our purview necessarily on looking at that. However, in working at the plant as we do right now, looking at the funding available, the part of the discharge permit that was just completed for the update every 5 years for the plant did identify the current volumes and that are there. And I know that under the volumes you're still well under the 75% criteria to look at the next upgrade for phase 1 of the plant. It's currently flowing about 25 up to, at one time it was up to 25,000 gallons. And that doesn't kick in place until I think it's 55 in that end. So let's look at my numbers at start here. I just lost my light. But at the moment, there's nothing we see that we could see, I guess Mr. Torres might be better suited to answer that when I don't know how your system revenues are looking on that, but there's nothing additional we see at the moment with the capital funding that is in place. That's no guarantee, but there's nothing at the moment that seems to have that in risk of being pulled at this time.
Okay. I have a question. I know I pulled some reports off of the town website for the first quarter 2020 report that shows the fecal CFUs fluctuating like crazy since October 2019. I know you weren't there at that time, but I'm also seeing, they were high and then they went down in January. Then they went back up in February. Can anybody speak to that, or are we not allowed to talk about these particular numbers tonight?
I don't think there's a problem talking about them. Part of the problem with those reports or something was a change from Mike Butler over to Mike Garcia, and Mike, he entered some numbers differently than Butler did. And as far as I know, they finally got that stuff straightened out. It was just a difference in who was filling them out. Wasn't too big a deal.
Okay, so for January, the numbers were, if you can explain these numbers to me, I don't even know what they mean. 355.7/866.4 under fecal CFUs. Then in February, they went up to like 1,900. And then in March, they were down to 330 again. Can you tell me what's causing that fluctuation?
Is Larry muted?
Yeah.
Hold on, Larry.
Okay, sorry about that. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I can now. Thank you.
Okay, apologize. I didn't realize I had it on mute. So the numbers jumping around are me making tweaks to the plant. It's also important to note that it seems, there's a big difference between 355 and 2419, but for me, they're both too high.
Right.
They don't meet permit, so which is why we've stopped reusing the water. We're not reusing any water. This was all pre-sodium hypochlorite. We got that hooked up a couple of weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll really start to see the numbers from that change now that we've got the chlorine hooked up, the sodium hypochlorite. You asked what the numbers mean.
Yeah.
The first number is an average. In the case of fecal coliform, it's technically a geometric mean, but it's basically an average of all the samples that were done for the month of January. So that 355.7 represents a geometric average of those samples, and then the 866.4 would be the highest sample of that group.
Okay.
The same thing for February and for March. The 2419.6, that's basically as high as the lab can count fecal coliform.
Okay.
So
okay.
It basically means they were higher than that, but they can't count any higher.
Okay.
And it doesn't, I don't want to say it doesn't really matter, but they all don't meet permit, so if it's,
right.
if it's over, it's over. So, but the good news is the chlorine will take care of the fecal coliform issue.
Okay. And then we will be able to use that water once again on our roads?
That is the plan, yes. But not until, sorry, go ahead.
Right. Is there a way to test it before we put it in our trucks each time before we put it on the roads? So we're not waiting for some reports that are a couple months behind?
I'm not sure I follow.
Okay, I'm looking for some kind of test that maybe the truck driver that's filling the water with can dip something in and see, is this water okay or not? Should I fill and spray on the roads before they spray it on the roads, and then we find out the report that the water was bad.
With regard to public health, the biggest thing on that list with regard to public health is the fecal coliform. Okay, the BOD is important, the nitrogen is important, but those are generally, I'm speaking in generalities. I have to be careful because, there's so many variables involved in this. So
right.
In general, the BOD, the nitrogen, the TKN, the nitrate, those have to do with protecting the groundwater, okay, and not so much public health. The fecal coliform is what we look at for public health. There is no quick test that you can just dip and look at the fecal coliform. However, the benefit of using chlorine to disinfect is we can measure a residual, a chlorine residual. And so as long as we have a good residual, we know with pretty good assurances that our coliform is also okay. Chlorine is very effective at disinfecting wastewater. So as long as we maintain that chlorine residual, we're good. Right now, we are testing the chlorine residual daily and recording that at the plant. You'll notice in my report, I mentioned putting on an online chlorine analyzer. That's something that I would like to do as the budget allows, which will get tied into the SCADA and basically monitor that chlorine residual all the time. And that gives me assurances that we're meeting fecal coliform limits.
Okay. I have one other question that came up because of what you were talking about. What are going to be the effects of everybody disinfecting everything all the time and that water going into our plant? Is that going to harm it in any way or anything like that?
Edgewood is unique in that there's a lot of, most of the flow coming in is not domestic, okay? That said, what you're specifically referring to is the biological portion of the plant, and that's what lowers the BOD, lowers the turbidity, removes the nitrogen or converts it to another species of nitrogen. And the short answer to your question is no, I don't believe so. The quantity of bacteria, bugs that are in the plant that are doing the work is pretty vast, and so it would take a lot of disinfectant to kill all of those. So I think the answer to that is no.
Okay. And then one other question. Okay, I see here in March of 2020, the numbers were as high as they could read, and then I look on the other page and I see it looks like there was an alternate disposal site. You disposed of 2,542,400 gallons of water. Where did you dispose of that at?
Okay, so that is the alternate disposal site that was originally required in the current discharge permit, and that is item. Let me find it here.
That's on the ground.
Item 5.
The pond.
That requires a. Sorry, what's that?
I just told her it's the ground east of the pond. That's where that is at.
Yes.
So was this sprinkled? So did you sprinkle 2 million gallons of water full of fecal coliform? I mean, how does that work? I see the month before it was 536,000 gallons.
Yeah, so that is, yes, if we're not meeting permit limits to reuse the water, then we are allowed to go to that alternate disposal system. And that's what it's for. And that was one of the main issues with the NOV was that and I wasn't here, so I don't really want to speak on things, but from what I've read, that was the issue is in order to maintain the required 2 feet freeboard in the pond, the water was just released. And now we have this disposal system. It's at the plant, okay? It's not, the public can't get to it. It's at the treatment plant, and that's, yes ma'am, that's what it's for, is to dispose of that water if it doesn't meet reuse requirements.
Okay. All right. That just sounded like an awful lot of water compared to the month before. So
yeah, so what happened is the water gets stored in that pond, and we kind of hit the point where we were getting close to that 2 feet freeboard that's also required in the permit. I reached out to NMed and got verification and permission that we were good to use that alternate disposal system. So we kind of started late February doing that, and that's why you see the 536-100. We're also not allowed to do it when it's freezing or when it's going to pond or stuff like that. So we had to kind of do it in February when we had warmer days. We couldn't run it at night. And then in March, we had enough good weather that we were able to dispose of more. So that's the reason for the numbers.
okay, so there's no concern to the public with this system at all, correct?
My understanding with the permit is that's what it's for. The alternate disposal method system is to dispose of water that does not meet the reuse permit requirements.
Okay.
And as far as the public goes, it's at the plant, it's fenced, there's signage. You know, the public should not be within the fence line of the wastewater treatment plant.
Right. I'm just concerned about kids who do things kids shouldn't do.
Any other counselor have any other questions?
I do, Mayor.
Counselor. Go ahead.
Good evening, Larry, Donville, and Todd. Thank you for being here this evening. This is Councilor Jaramillo. As I said earlier, was worried also about public health. In the past, I know you're not addressing that, but as far as what was being put on the roads, I'm glad that that's no longer happening, and thank you for shutting that down right away in January. It still seems though, like you said, over permit, I think our limit is 23, right? And in all of the reports in the past, they have been testing less than 1 up until, what was it, like October, November timeframe where it jumped up. And then you guys replaced membranes in January, is that right?
I believe that was actually March when we did that.
Oh, okay.
We wanted to replace them earlier, but the crane not functioning prevented us from doing it sooner.
Okay. All right. So then the numbers though were still, well, it was 880 in January and then jumped up to the max for February and March. And it seems like what somebody told me is that a septic tank at our house is maybe like 4.5, which would be in that, range of safeness. So I think Jerry said something about 1,100 times over the legal limit. What does that mean? What is the impact of that?
Specifically speaking in terms of fecal coliform, fecal coliform comes from warm-blooded mammals. Okay, so that's its source. We're not, so understanding that is important because we're not creating it at the plant. We're not creating it in the pond. Okay, it's coming in the wastewater from the gastrointestinal tracts of warm-blooded mammals, and it's millions, billions per person. So the treatment process at Edgewood, a septic system is, I know they both treat wastewater, but they're very different in the way they work. Septic tanks the detention time is months and months and months and months. So the bacteria will just kind of naturally die off, okay, in that environment. Whereas at a typical treatment plant, you will get some removal of it through the wastewater process, the biological process, but it's not really set up to remove the fecal coliform. What is the disinfection. You know, ultraviolet, chlorine, that's what's set up to remove the coliform, reduce the coliform. So in terms of, it's also an indicator organism, okay? Because we can't measure all the pathogens in wastewater. We use fecal coliform, or a lot of states have gone to E. coli to indicate that, hey, there's a problem with the disinfection. So in terms of since I've been here, the risk to public health is zero, because, well, I shouldn't say zero, because it was alluded to earlier about the kids, and obviously, I can't say 100%, but we're not reusing the water. It's not going on the roads. So it's not, there is no public health issue in my view.
And so the disinfecting, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
The Clorox, somebody mentioned that doesn't kill the pathogens, it just kills the marker.
No, it will kill. So the marker, I think what they're referring to with marker is the fecal coliform, again, or E. coli. It's what I'm referring to as an indicator organism. Okay, so it indicates that there may be pathogens present, but there's many different types of pathogens. It's impossible to test for, maybe not impossible, but financially impossible to test for all the pathogens that may be present in wastewater. So we look for these markers, if you will, that there may be an issue, and chlorine is a very effective disinfectant. Extremely. I mean, it's used in wastewater plants all over the world, as well as drinking water. So, and that's why I say what's good about it is we can measure a residual, which quantifies how much chlorine is in the water. If we have a residual of chlorine in the water, then it's a pretty good indicator that we disinfected the water properly.
But then it's not, does it take care of the turbidity, like the solids?
No. And that's an important distinction as far as the turbidity, the BOD, the nitrogen. Those all have to do with the biological process of the plant, and they're very different. And that's what I was trying to, convey in my report, that the chlorine is specifically to deal with the coliform. The membranes and the treatment process will be to take care of the BOD, the turbidity, and the nitrogen.
Okay. And then about, Councilor Abraham's comment about kids, I do know that in eastern New Mexico, there was a boy that died from getting into somewhere where he shouldn't have been, got cholera or something, and passed away, unfortunately. So it is, it is very serious. With that, I was wondering, have you disinfected the water truck? Because I'm concerned about our truck operators, and I'm even concerned about Mike, being at the plant with these really high levels that are at the max that can even be tested. What's the risk to our employees?
Well, there are risks to wastewater employees, but what you need to understand is that it's an inherent risk in all wastewater plants. We're measuring what's in the effluent. There's billions in the influent. So you mitigate the risks, right? You wear PPE, you use proper hygiene, you get hepatitis shots. So there is risk, but there's treatment plants all over. You mitigate the risk the best you can.
Okay. So one report from Mr. McGill, if I remember right, said something about the water trucks that had been last fall and winter putting out, the high, the reuse water that was contaminated, and that there was a lot of like sludge stuff coming out of them. So I guess my question is to Mayor and to you, have those been cleaned? Are they clean now?
Mayor, Council, if I may, and I guess Larry, can you speak to this? So when we're talking about the testing and where it's at, and can you explain the location and then how we also currently have a sodium hypochlorite that was put in by previous operators at the pump station where it goes out into the line? So the numbers that are being tested they're still high, but they're lower than what they were there. I mean, so there is that sodium hypochlorite, I believe, which is going into the reuse. But where the permit calls out the testing site to be at is at that tank right after the UV, where the UV infection should have been. That was called out on the original permit, and that, for whatever reason, was never changed when they put in the sodium hypochlorite in the other place. And that's one of the things, I guess, where there is a kind of a treatment being done to it, but not at the permit, required testing site. And Larry,
thanks for bringing that up. Because I actually, after I submitted the report, I thought of that and wanted to include it in my report, and I also failed to mention it here tonight, so I appreciate you bringing that up. So the permit requires for the test to be done after the UV system and before the pond, okay? So I have put in a disinfection system in the plant to meet the limits in the permit with regard to where we're supposed to sample, okay? So now you move outside to the pond. There has been, for quite some time, I can't speak to how long, but there has been a pump and sodium hypochlorite that is injected as the water leaves the pond. So as long as there's chlorine being injected, there was most likely additional treatment taking place that would kill the coliform, if that makes sense.
Okay. My other question relates to your opinion on capacity of the plant. Where are we at on that? And then secondly, this would be for Mayor and the clerk. Has there been any movement on development at Farmers behind Walmart that we need to be looking to the future for as far as capacity and our asset management plan?
Mayor, Council, so there was a interested party that was looking at coming in behind there. That happened late summer, early fall. There was conversations with them, and then they just kind of fell off the earth. But there's been no active development that's has an active application where we would require that. So as of right now, no, there's nothing that we know of that's coming in that will impact the capacity of the plant. Any new developments or anything of that, housing developments or things of that nature behind that property.
Because I'm sure, Larry, you probably heard already that the theory was that by having this development back there, that would help the type of stuff going into the system. Do you think that's a good strategy?
Membrane plants are pretty robust. That said, I don't think it hurts to have some more domestic sewage going into the plant, certainly. And then obviously there's revenue sides of that, as we're trying to make this plant do what it's supposed to do and meet permit. That helps as well.
Okay. And so where are we at on capacity?
Right now, currently, I'm not seeing any capacity issues at the plant. Matter of fact, I turned down so the way the membranes work is the pumps run at different speeds based upon the demand coming in at any given time. to the plant. So the higher the level gets, the pumps that send the water out will speed up and slow down. I actually turned them down quite a bit. They were set at 25 gallons a minute for the low, so that's the lowest setting. I've turned that down to 15, and I'm still seeing at night, especially where the plant will the pumps will shut off because it just shows there's not a capacity issue at the plant. In terms of moving forward, I believe there is a space already there for a fourth cassette. So we've got 2 in right now. We've got a third one offline. We'll soon have a new cassette with new plates in the third position. And then we've got a spot for and an additional cassette. So we could increase the capacity as far as the membrane plates without really doing much work to the plant by 25%, as we go from 3 cassettes to 4. So I think that, in my mind, addresses immediate concerns of people coming on. Obviously, if we get, somebody that wants to come on that's going to have a big impact, we're going to want to look at that before, and address that before we just hook them up.
Sure. And are these supplies and equipment that we need, are they coming from Japan, or is there another vendor?
I think they are coming from Japan, but when I got there was actually a cassette sitting on the floor with new plates, and there was enough plates to replace another cassette, which that delights me because I don't see that all the time. So there was equipment already there, new equipment ready to go in, which kind of leads back to the earlier question about capital outlay, for cassettes. From what I saw, that was there. And we just received a new shipment, and I've spoken with Mr. Torres about getting additional plates in the future as well.
Okay, very good. So now I have a request of our clerk, Juan. I think that possibly there's an indemnification clause in the contract with Mr. Hall. And if you could just get me something on that. I don't know if our attorneys reviewed it, but that's something that typically we don't indemnify our vendors here in New Mexico, correct? Well, anyway, you can give me information on that if you don't mind. I just want to make sure that we're not breaking a state statute, Mr. Hall. So there's that. And then lastly, I underlined this in your report. It says, I am very serious when it comes to doing things the correct way and ensuring permit compliance and public health. So thank you. That is a breath of fresh air. And I'm really, really thankful that you've straightened out a lot of this stuff already. And I know some of it was in place, like you gave credit where credit was due. But thank you for having that principle behind your work.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate you bringing that up. And I just to add to that, I had a lot of concerns when I first went to the plant, and I met with Mr. Torres and Mayor Bassett and Ms. Salazar, and it was a good meeting, and or I wouldn't be here. And so they've been very helpful in making sure. I just wanted assurances that the will and the capacity was there to do things right, and I've received a lot of support and a lot of help in getting what we need. I mean, I understand that there are budgets and there are limits, and we need to work through those. But I've appreciated that support, like I said, and if I didn't have it, I wouldn't be here.
Okay. And then just one last question. Is there any reason why you didn't provide us reports January through May?
I just wasn't asked to, and I could certainly do that moving forward.
Okay, thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions for Mr. Hall or Todd or Donzel?
This is Councilor Holly. I just have a few comments I'd like to make.
Go ahead.
First of all, Mr. Hall, I'd like to thank you for standing for questions tonight, and especially appreciate the report that you wrote. For someone who's not a subject matter expert in this area, it was quite easy to follow. And I think you probably put the public's mind at ease. I just want to reiterate what I heard, that there is no risk to the public health because of this plant, and the capacity, there are no issues to capacity at that plant either. And I am just very appreciative of the short time that you've been on contract with us. You identified concerns and implemented fixes quickly, and I know you're still working to design strategies for further corrections at the plant. And I appreciate the town for working as diligently as they did to find you, because you come with a lot of experience and you're well qualified. And then my kudos also to Bohannon Houston. I really appreciate the service that you offer for helping to find funding sources, especially in this time when budgets are so uncertain. And I'm just so heartened to hear that the capital outlay funds that we had available for things like the concrete pad are still available to us. So I'm just excited about moving forward and getting this plant humming. Thank you to all.
Thank you, Councilor.
Thank you very much.
Councilor Abrams, you have any questions?
Not really any questions. The report is very thorough, and I definitely appreciate Mr. Hall's work there. I also wanted to thank Mr. Worthington and Mr. Burke. I'm very pleased to hear that the 4 projects that we have to basically bring the plant back up to standards and to meet some of the other obligations that we were handed is there. That funding looks like it's all in place and looks like it's adequate. We actually have a little extra funding, if my math is correct, for doing some of the things Mr. Hall has planned. Other than that, thank you guys very much. I'm glad to see that we're making good progress and relatively quickly.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, Council, if I may, also, we did have some conversation, well, we've had multiple conversations with the Environment Department, and one of the things that we've done is we've on our website, and you all, as the governing body, were made aware of this, but so the public's now aware as well. On our website, we went and posted every monthly report that we've had, and then every quarterly report that we could find, kind of going back in time. And I mean, from the laboratory reports to the things that were submitted to NMED. So we're putting all that information on the website. It's available. You can see what the numbers were, going back through the history that we have. So we're trying to put that forth, and that information is now available. And as we move forward, we'll put all that information, on the website as the test results and everything come in. So I just wanted to make sure that the public's aware of it. I know Council Carla sent you out an email last week stating that she was going to have all that up by Friday, and she did put it up, and we're going to continue to put up more of it as we get them. So just wanted to let the public know of that one.
Okay, Larry and Donzel and Todd, thank you all for checking in tonight, and we'll be talking to you.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, that one done. The next item is action items. And the first one, Council, is a discussion, consideration, action on approval of Resolution 2020-10, a resolution prohibiting open burning within the municipal boundaries of the town of Edgewood to begin immediately and continue until further order of the Santa Fe County Fire Marshal. Council, you've got a copy of the resolution in your packet there, and you can see that there is a element of this that's due to COVID-19, and that plays into all of this, but essentially, what we do is mirror Santa Fe County. Whenever they have something, since we have our JPA with them, whatever they come up with, we basically match it. So this is an effort tonight to match the resolution and stuff they've already passed. So I will entertain a motion on this one.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve Resolution 2020-10, a resolution prohibiting open burning within the municipal boundaries of the town of Edgewood, beginning immediately and continuing until further order of the Santa Fe County Fire Marshal.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve adoption of Resolution 2020-10, a resolution prohibiting open burning within the municipal boundaries of the town of Edgewood, beginning immediately and continuing until further order of the fire marshal. Discussion? Okay, seeing none, let's do a roll call vote. Start up here, Councilor Jaramillo.
Aye.
Councilor Abrams.
Aye.
Councilor Abraham.
Aye.
And Councilor Holly.
Aye.
Thank you, Council. Next item is discussion, consideration, action on approval of the financial report for the month of April 2020. Mr. Torres.
Okay, Mayor, Council, I guess kind of to get into the revenue side of things and just talking about future projections. I mean, I think it's kind of too early for us to tell what the actual impact to us is going to be. So the revenue we're seeing for this month was for March, and this was the, I think the restrictions went in place mid to end of March in that time frame, and that was when everyone had the big rush, buying up the toilet paper, all the supplies in the stores, everything of that nature. So, I mean, you can definitely see on our food and medical distribution portion, we normally average, between I guess this year, 100,000 more or less. We're 144,000. Overall, the total distribution, 450,124.70. I think we'll still see that same higher amount than last year. Well, of course, over last year we had an issue with tax and rev in our distribution, but we're usually kind of sitting right around the 360 range, 370 range, and then I think we're going to be higher this next month as well because just my own observation going in the stores and seeing that the food, shelves were kind of empty. Just trying to find supplies. You go in there now this month, and you can actually purchase things that you have stuff available. So I really don't know what the impact to the town of Edgewood's going to be moving forward. I don't know how much longer the order is going to stay. We're starting to open up. I think we can now eat outside in a restaurant. Starting today. Hopefully, they'll ease up on some of the restrictions, but I really, to be honest with you, I don't know if I can predict what the economic impact of the town is going to be in the short term nor the long term. I think we're just going to have to play it, play it by ear, so to speak, and just kind of really watch the revenue over the next, next year, next 24 months, just to see where we're at and if we, make adjustments accordingly. I know we're going to work with the department heads to make sure, the new year comes in. I know we passed the interim budget as last year's budget. We're not going to have, well, of course we never do, but we're not going to have a run on the budget, right at day one, So I think, we're revenue, it's up in the air. I think we're one of the fortunate ones where our numbers are actually positive, where other places are just devastated. I think that's, basically due to the stores that we have. I know our small businesses, some of them have suffered, our restaurants have suffered, and I hope they all start opening up. But, we're, here in those conference calls with the, clerks, managers, and mayors from all around the state, when you hear them talk about, all their stores are down, their GRT is just devastated. My own observation driving to Santa Fe yesterday, normally you see, downtown Santa Fe is just flooded with tourists going to all the shops and looking at everything, and it was virtually a ghost town at, 10:30, 11 in the morning. So, you know, we're fortunate in that aspect. I know we have the stores, the businesses that are still open. I mean, just my own, I've made more trips to racks, you know, this past couple months than I think I ever have, you know, just even now, just driving by, you can just see all the stores, the lines outside of Dairy Queen, Sonic. I mean, Walmart for the longest time, every day looked like Black Friday. So, you know, we're kind of fortunate compared to other municipalities, but I don't know how long we're going to be in that good fortune. If we stay, what the impact's going to be. So I don't know what our revenue is going to be. I do think we're going to have to try and look to find ways to diversify. As Councilor Abrams said, you know, with Hold Harmless, I mean, if something happens to Hold Harmless, I mean, that's roughly 30% of our budget. You know, I don't know how we can handle that hit and not have any major consequences throughout the town with the services we provide and what we offer. So once again, we'll just kind of have to monitor that and play it by ear. That being said, I mean, if you will move to the treasurer's report, we have, you know, we're general fund. We're ending the month of April with 3.2 million in the bank, or on the general fund, total of almost 3.5 million overall across all funds. Move over to the council report. So we did have some big expenditures. The police department's largest expenditure were the upfit of 2 vehicles. So you'll see the large one to Code 3 and then to the Ford dealership, and that was purchase of the vehicles and the upfit. As was brought up earlier, the Robles, Rael, and Anaya. Now, part of that were their billing was several months all at once. We received a statement, and then there were several months where they said we hadn't paid and we hadn't received the statement, so we were working on that. Once again, the Moriarty Concrete, the 18,800, almost 19,000 for steeplechase. Let's see. The PD building signs, so those are ordered and those are, hopefully they'll be installed shortly. Chief is here, is kind of in the background. Chief, I don't know if you can shout and tell us when you think they'll have that installation of those signs up and running.
So, talking with contractors, and I just reached out to them, Mayor, Council, and they're expecting the letters to start going on the building within 2 weeks.
Okay.
So we'll finally have a marked building after about 18 months.
So it's
undercover. Progress. Yes.
And then also you're going to have the monument sign as well installed in the front. So we're kind of moving forward.
Right, the monument's going to go down kind of where your drive is there.
Yes, but that first
right.
Pine tree there.
Yeah. And so with that, Council, I'll stand for any questions on this one.
Mayor, did you have questions?
Go ahead.
I noticed a line item that said new hire for Dean Salazar. Do you know what that was?
Yes, Mayor, Council. So every time we have the new hire, we'll purchase their equipment and their uniforms, their vests, all of that stuff off of that. And Chief just writes that in his line item and his description, so we know that that was specific to the new hires.
Okay. Is Animal Control Services open?
Yes, Mayor, Council. Animal Control
They
Services
have been open.
Are open. They're Chief, correct me if I'm wrong, by appointment for adoptions and stuff. But for the most part, kind of like we are close to the public, but they still are providing the services.
Yes, well, that's correct. Encouraging appointments, call-ins, anything we can handle over phone possibly. But we are still taking the walk-ins. They're just using the PPE at the counter and then wiping down afterwards.
Okay.
Yeah, they've taken steps over there to, you know, block or keep the public from direct contact and stuff, but they're still in business.
Okay. And then I know we were purchasing base course. Where is our base course stored at?
Mayor, Council, so that base course went directly onto steeplechase. We actually have a very limited stock behind the road department in those piles. When we put it down, we put pretty much 2 inches on the road and just kind of move forward with that. But we really don't keep a large stock supply on hand other than just for repair if they're doing some digging or, you know, there's some major potholes that they need to fill in.
Okay.
But yeah, for the most part, we don't keep stock of that.
Okay. And are we aware of any COVID cases here?
Other than the dashboard, I think last check on the dashboard in our zip code, we have 8 cases.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's all I'm aware
All
of.
right. And then in the police, in Chief's report, it refers to picking up new police trucks. Is that something that we were able to, is that brand new?
Yes, Mayor Council, those are 2 brand new trucks for our fleet, which came in kind of in the nick of time. We had several vehicles that were out, just to age and so due to some damage that were waiting to get repaired. So it kind of came in right in time.
Okay. On the equestrian center, if we are willing to go by our resolution and take care of it, isn't Santa Fe County willing to let us open it?
So I guess, Mayor Council, with respect to the resolution, and you're talking the 2016-09 or something like that, my understanding that resolution was was specifically for the creation of a overnight equestrian center, basically a place for them to stay, and for a kiosk sign to be installed. And I think the town had committed with that resolution to the installation. I know at the time Roger Holden had many conversations with the head of Santa Fe County Facilities. The mayor and I and Roger, we went up and met with the county manager, kind of pitched the idea, and kind of got one of those from the county. Okay, thank you. It's a great idea. We'll get back to you. And it's been crickets ever since. I know there's been conversations recently, I guess in the recent past, of just asking about the maintenance of the facility. If they'd be willing, what they would be willing to do, what they would be, willing, to allow the town to do. I think the town, I don't know, we'd even asked if they'd be willing to give us the asset, sell it to us, so then we can maintain, operate it, and take care of it. And we haven't really received any feedback other than that, other than the county telling, I think the last one that was Karina, and the county pretty much said, it's our facility, we're going to take care of it. We have no interest in giving it to you guys, selling it to you. It's part of, they've got long range plans, and that's kind of where we're at. But we have, like I said, we have reached out to the county to ask about that, but it's one of those, once we found out we had an expired agreement and we were operating on it, we basically turned over all control because we were taking reservations for it. We've given all of that back to the county until we can kind of get some sort of agreement in place. But in our conversations with the county, it's their facility, their owner-operator, maintaining it, insuring it. We don't have really any control. When we get the phone calls here in regard to it for setting up events, doing anything like that, now we refer everything to them.
And I think what you're talking about on their long-term plan is COPAC. They had that plan for a trail system all through the county. That's a trailhead for it. And, if they're not interested in changing that plan, then they're still going to want to keep that as their asset, I think. We're certainly amenable to talking to them on all aspects of it, but that's been another one where it's just been awful difficult to get any kind of face-to-face with them and talk about things like that.
Okay, so what's the next step on it?
I think as far as that resolution, that only concerned that kiosk and maybe something on some sort of overnight something. I don't remember just what Roger had in mind there, but that would be the extent of what was in that resolution that we passed. And it doesn't speak to the overall ownership of the property, which, like Juan said, they've indicated they desire to keep it.
And Mayor Council, just in our conversation when we did have that meeting with the county manager and the head of the facilities, we were asking, for the overnight facility, one of the things that facility really needs would be like some corrals and stuff for the short-term stay. Because right now, if someone's going to bring their animals in, there's just the arena. There's nothing else for them to go put something else in. So if we had more than one person staying there, horses would be mingled. Even some people, they come in and, their horses themselves have to be separated. So we were talking about installing some corrals for that stay, for the overnight stay and stuff. And once again, the county kind of, thank you. We appreciate your idea, your concern for the facility, and that was pretty much the end of the conversation.
It's almost a thing of don't call us, we'll call you.
But I know Roger had numerous contacts with them trying to get that set up, and nothing ever came of that.
And for us, the other thing was just finding out that whatever that initial agreement was, it had basically expired in 2012. So
maybe I should give them a call then, because I think that we're just, and why would they be telling the public that it's our fault?
Well, like I said, Mayor Council, so when we spoke to him today, Chris Barella at Public Works, he basically said what he is telling and what he's directed all of his staff to say when they inquire about why it's closed, it's purely because of COVID-19 and the public gathering, aspect of the health order, and they have no mechanism to control that. So I don't know where it's coming back. I don't know who at the county is telling them that it's the town's fault because we won't maintain it. I don't know where that's coming from, but every indication we have from the county was that is not what they're saying. This is purely related to COVID-19. It has nothing to do with any agreement between the town and the county. And, as soon as the governor changes the restrictions, then they'll get that facility up and running.
Okay. All right. So once they open up parks, then we can follow up on that part is what I'm going to tell people, because I think, once they open up for, community and safety, when they believe that they can, then I think we need to just follow up and check, because it's an important part of our community. I mean, the outdoor life is a big deal. So, okay. I just want to mention again my request on EPCOR that we stop spending legal fees. And so I know that even if this was a few months that the attorney didn't invoice us, there's still a lot of money going out the door for something that the public doesn't want. So we need to put that issue to rest, please. On the IPRA, Councilor Hawley, I guess you IPRA'd yourself and myself and Councilor Abrams and Abraham, but not you, Mayor. I'm just wondering when that's due, Juan.
Mayor Council, that was due on that Tuesday, last Tuesday.
But you said you were going to extend for the 15 days, and I wasn't sure when that was up.
Well, Mayor Council, I do apologize because when I sent you the IPRA, you said you were going to send me the information. I didn't receive it, so I submitted what I had.
Point of order. I don't even see this on tonight's agenda.
It's not. And it's certainly not on the financial report. Let's get back to the issue at hand.
And then also, my other question was, as far as budget-wise, we have, I think, 3 open high-level positions, right, as far as director. And so I'm just wondering if we're going to hold off on advertising those until we know what our budget is going to be, or what it is, Mayor, that you're planning for those positions. Because I think we have Norton and
Parks and Rec.
the Parks and Rec, and then there's one more that's escaping me at the moment. But yeah, it seems like there were 3 that were open. What?
I don't know who said that, but anyway, I believe on Norton's, we may look at replacing him. There's enough work there for somebody else when you got those guys out on the grader and the water trucks. We're going to look at maybe replacing him.
Wastewater treatment plant, the operator.
Yeah, that's right. The third one would be the wastewater treatment plant operator.
Okay.
And that one, Mayor Council, if I may, that one's still advertised, waiting for applicants, and that might be a discussion at a later date to maybe look at bringing in a different level operator, just so we can try and get an applicant, because we're clearly not getting anything with our advertisement for a level 3 or 4. maybe we could bring in another level, 1 or 2, and someone we can train up. But as it sits right now, we're not getting anyone for that operator position.
Oh, Councilor Abraham?
I have a question about what's not on the report. I haven't seen that we've paid this wastewater operator at all. Have they billed us? Are they going to bill us? How are we? I haven't seen anything to pay him.
Yes, Mayor Council, we have paid him when he does invoice. Let me see if I can pull that one up really quick. I'm not sure if it's on this one. I think it was on the last one.
And then the other thing is, part of his duty going to be train Mike Garcia? That was the whole point all along, was to hire somebody to train Mike Garcia to become our certified. Is that still in the works?
Mayor Council, yes, he is working with Mike Garcia to train him. But part of the problem is Mike Garcia right now is just a laborer. He doesn't have a level at all, and so he is working with them to get him brought up. But then it takes a process for those levels. You can't just go from a laborer to a level 3 or 4. And I'm not an expert on that, but my understanding with the water and wastewater certifications in this state is once you achieve, I think you can go all the way up to a level 2. You can just test for a level 2, but after that you have to have so many years as that level before you're even eligible to test for the next level up.
Okay.
So it'll take a while for Garcia to get to that point, because I think our plant permit requires a minimum level 3
Right.
to do the oversight. And that's going to be something we're going to have to bring up next fiscal year, issuing some sort of RFP for services if we don't find a level 3 or 4 to run our plant, just so if it is Mr. Hall's company or another company, that's going to have to put in for it. But we'll definitely exceed the 60,000. Our current agreement with him is basically not to exceed contract for professional services. So that's enough to suffice for this current fiscal year, but next fiscal year we'll have to look at, if we don't get a qualified applicant, issuing an RFP for that service.
Okay. Did you find the invoice from where we paid him?
It's not on this statement, but I know we have paid him in the past.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Abrams, go ahead.
I'd like to move to approve the financial report for the month of April 2020.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the financial report for the month of April 2020. Do it on a roll call vote. Start here with Councilor Abrams.
Aye.
Councilor Holly.
Aye.
Councilor Abraham.
Aye.
And Councilor Jaramillo.
Aye.
Thank you, Council. Okay, our next item then is Resolution 2020-11, a resolution accepting and approving the fiscal year 2019 Town of Edgewood financial audit. Mr. Torres, you want to start us off on this?
Okay, real quick, let me see if I can give Miriam control so she can...
Yeah, I see Miriam yawning in that. We need to get on through this so she can get to bed.
So she can actually share her screen.
Can you hear us, Miriam? Not yet.
Nope.
Hang on.
He's on mute.
Muted.
Your mic is muted, Miriam.
Hello, Juan?
There you go.
Yeah, I tried earlier to see if I can share my screen, but I think it's on my end. It's on my computer. I'm just having some trouble with understanding this new computer they assigned me.
Okay, hang on. I think I can make you the presenter. So give me 1 second. I'll do that.
But I was just going to go over the actual audit itself. Do you have a copy of
Yes,
it?
everyone does have a copy of the actual audit.
I'm gonna need to plug this thing
Okay. Okay, Juan. Mayor Bassett, council member, thank you for having me today. We have issued our report and it has been released and it's on the state auditor's website for the public. In 2019, we issued a qualified opinion, and it was actually based on the lack of control over capital assets. During our test work over capital assets, we noted several items which were not included in the asset listing, which was certified by council. And there was also a lack of internal control over the capital assets, as a whole. That was the basis of our qualified opinion. And for the findings, we had the first findings that I will be going over is related to travel and per diem, which was a repeat finding, and this is on page 103 of the audit report. During our test work of our travel, we noted that there was a sample where the rate for travel stay was more than the allowed rate of $215 per night, and then there were no proper approval for that. And for some samples where actual rate were used for meals, there were no receipts provided for our review. And for one sample, also the statement of mileage reimbursement form was missing a signature from supervisors. And that was a repeat finding. And the annual inventory certification was also repeated and modified. The town did perform an annual capital asset inventory certification. However, the listing was not complete and accurate prior to approval. And this was also mentioned in our opinion. The next finding 2019-003, was related to the late IPA recommendation and audit contract. This is a non-compliance audit. According to the state auditor's rule, the IPA recommendation need to be submitted by May 15, 2019. However, it was submitted subsequent to that. And finding 2019-004 on page 108 is related to stale dated checks. This is also other non-compliance. During our test work over cash reconciliation, we had 7 stale checks in the Wells Fargo pool cash account, which were over 1 year old, in a total amount of $1,343. And finding 2019-005 is related to non-compliance with the New Mexico Environmental Department. This was a finding which we were provided by the information that when we requested from Mr. Torres, he provided us the letter, and the letter was dated September 5th, 2018, where the New Mexico Environmental Department issued a notice of violation to the town of Edgewood wastewater for non-compliance with the term and condition in the discharge permit renewal issued by the New Mexico Environmental Department on September 4, 2015 to the town of Edgewood. And the next finding was related to internal control over cash and monthly closing. This was a material witness. During our review of the bank reconciliation, we determined whether bank reconciliation are being performed in a timely manner. We noticed that there were 3 out of 18 month statement we tested that were completed in a timely manner. And we also noticed that there was The town was victim of a counterfeit check, which also Mr. Torres discussed with us at the entrance conference, in the amount of $4,001. And this was discovered in the month of June, reconciliation. But this resulted in a loss because the town did not implement fraud prevention services with its bank at the time. And for our review also, we noted that there were some instances where monthly financial reporting packet were, weren't provided to the trustee at a monthly council meeting. The next finding is related to violation of the Open Meeting Act. The condition of this finding is related to, and this is on page 113, it's related to the fact that we did receive also a letter from the the State Auditor's Office, of course, and also the New Mexico Office of Attorney General, where there were some communication related to a violation of the Open Meeting Act. However, we performed review of the board meeting minutes, and what we noted was that the town council failed to provide reasonable specificity in the language of some items listed on the meeting's agenda in 5 separate meetings. And those happened on April 18, 2018, July 18, 2018, November 14, 2018, January 9, 2019, and April 10, 2019. And in a motion to enter into closed session, on 2 separate occasions, the town council failed to reasonably identify a subject that was to be discussed in closed session. And that happened on the meeting of February 7 and in the meeting of March 20 of 2019. And the next finding was related to the town's nepotism ordinance, 1999B. This was also non-compliance. During the board meeting of March 14, the town's mayor reappointed his first cousin to the town's Planning and Zoning Commission for a term of 2 years. And that concluded the finding we had this year. And as far as the prior year findings, we had the improper mileage reimbursement, which was repeated and modified, the annual inventory certification, which was repeated and modified, and we had payroll finding, which was resolved, and also finding 2018-004, which also were resolved related to policies and procedures. And if you have any questions related to those, please let me know.
Council, have any questions for Miriam? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I guess I'll make the motion.
I have a question. As far as the one finding that we had, that was a loss because we hadn't, we had not done, let me see, what is it? There was something that we were supposed to do to prevent future losses from the fraud. Has that been taken care of now?
Mayor, Council, we should be on positive pay protection, and we are still waiting for something basically to present to you to get back, so to switch banks from Wells Fargo to First Community or Bank of the West. I am not getting a response back from Bank of the West. They're in T. Harris, but we are, that's as soon as we get that, we'll get that forth to you so we can move forward and you guys can make a decision on the banking services. But we should be we should be protected with positive pay.
All right, thank you.
So I'll make the motion to approve resolution 2020-11, acceptance and approval of fiscal year 2019 audit.
And a second?
I have, did somebody second?
Not yet.
Oh, you asked for one, okay.
We got a second?
Mr. Mayor, I'll second the motion.
Got a motion and
Then
a
I have a
second.
question.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I have quite a few points here. On the qualified opinion, I think I had already been telling you guys that since I was first elected about the capital assets and the work that needs to be done there. So that's been, kind of a long-standing thing that even predates this administration. Like I've mentioned many times before, that there's just a lot of work to be done to get all the infrastructure and all the records and everything in place on capital assets. And so, again, I'll offer my help for whatever you all may need. Just let me know. Then page 35, just wanted to point out that wastewater had a $527,000 loss. The prior year was around $500,000. Page 56, the note 7, on the related party transaction, this one says that on May 2018, Josephine Bassett, mother of the mayor, basically donated the easement for the sewer on the family property there. We've had a lot of conversations about that, and I just need it reflected in the record that that's factually incorrect. So this footnote is stating that she donated the sewer line with all this constructing, operating, and maintaining over, under, and above and across lands. But that never happened. It was only for the sewer lift station. So this footnote, just for the record, is not accurate. And then related to that, I didn't see a finding related to the Governmental Conduct Act violation that relates to that entire piece of the project. And we did have a couple of material weaknesses. One that really disappoints me is the 2019-002, the annual inventory certification. And this one, I just wish that council would have listened to my advice and not went ahead and approved a list that wasn't accurate. Hopefully we can not make that mistake again. And then the monthly close process, I think that was the other person retiring in finance, I think pretty soon, Juan. So I think there needs to be some, planning ahead for that, for the financial close and reporting and anybody who may be leaving, retiring. Let's see. The Open Meetings Act funding, I wasn't really sure, Mayor and Juan, why you argued the finding with the AG's determination. So it sounded like you didn't agree with the oversight agency. I wasn't sure why. And then also on the nepotism, again, we have another situation where the ordinance is pretty clear cut, and yet again you're arguing. So that was, I think, the main points that I have and the issues that I do have with the report. I do want to mention, just my disappointment. The first year I could kind of see I was brand new to council, but Mayor, you have not included me on the entrances and the exit conferences of the audit. You've chosen Councilor Hawley and Councilor Abrams for those. And as well, I was not provided the draft of this audit before it went to the state auditor's office. And that is the right of every single governing body member. And that was refused to me by the auditor, by the state auditor's office, and by the town administration. And I'm very unhappy about that because I feel like I cannot do my duty as a counselor that's in charge of finance if I cannot be involved in this process, especially with my expertise in this area. So that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Well, I got a question for you. This related
Sure.
party thing is the same one that was in 2018. And in 2018, it was all right. Why is it a problem now?
Well, the reason it's a problem now, Mayor, is because CORE did their homework. And CORE figured out that you ran the line on your family's land. That's why. Nobody knew that before. In fact, that's even further proof that the only thing I knew about was the lift station. That's all I knew
There
about.
are easements for that line to go through there.
But that didn't happen in 2018, Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, point of order. We have a motion and a second. We've had some discussion here. You know, and I look at some of these findings and I question the validity of those findings as they pertain to finance. But beyond that, Mr. Mayor, I think we've discussed it. If Councilor Abraham has something to add, then great. If not, let's vote on this thing.
I do have a question. As far as the related party on page 56. Okay, so this was discussed in closed session, so there's no record of what was donated. So when you look at the timelines of when these were donated, these two pieces of property were not donated at the same time. The easement for the sewer line was donated in 2017, and the easement for the lift station was donated in 2018, which was the one we were notified about. How do you go about correcting this information that's in this report?
What needs corrected?
The fact that they were not donated on May of 2018 together.
That's because they sought
were
the
donated
sewer, they sought the line, the easement for the line in 2017, thinking we
Right.
had a place for the lift station on the other side of the road. That was the holdup there.
The problem is we were never notified of the donation in 2017, ever. Unless somebody
It's
has
in the
record
county-
of it,
it's in the
because
county-
it was not.
It's in the county clerk's office.
It was not disclosed in our closed meeting, and every council member knows what was disclosed. It was the lift station. So
There was-
how do we change
There
this
was an
if we
easement
all
placed
know
on
what
that
was
property in
disclosed
1966.
on that particular item that was disclosed to council?
There's been an easement out there since 1966.
There was a new one donated in 2017. You just said so.
It was.
That one is not disclosed here on the related party of May of 2018. The only one we were disclosed, the only one we were told about was the lift station.
Doesn't change the fact that it's there and it's legal. It's recorded at the county clerk's office in Santa Fe. Just like the one that goes through the Key Place.
Miriam, how do we clarify that only the lift station was donated at the time we were notified?
Councilor Abraham, I'm worried that I'm not
There was a map
really
that went out to the council members in 2016 showing where the stuff would go. You knew about it in 2016, Councilor Abraham.
The easement?
She knew it was
No, I
going
did
through
not
that
know
property.
I did not know about the easement in 2016. The map that came out that we voted on in 2016 said the priority was going to be Route 66, not your family property.
No. The map that we had in 2016 when it went on the ICIP showed it going through that field. Yeah, it did.
Show me the map. Show me the map. I haven't seen it.
Yeah, you did. You were at the meeting.
No, I did not. Anyway, Miss Miriam, how do we, if we
There's
feel
nothing
like,
to fix. There's nothing to fix. You know where it was going.
according to the mayor,
You knew where it was going. Let's
The
go for the
question
vote
is-
here. We got a motion
we
and a
were
second.
notified about the donation of the lift station. Nothing more.
The other stuff's all legal. It was there. That one easement's been there since 1966.
Okay, then let's vote on it.
Councilor Abrams?
Aye.
Councilor Holly?
Aye.
Councilor Abraham?
Nay.
Councilor Jaramillo?
Nay.
We have a tie vote. In that situation, the mayor votes, so I vote aye. Next item is calendar review. Town offices are still open by appointment only. And the next regular council meeting is scheduled for June 10th, 2020, 6:30 p.m. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move
So
we
moved.
adjourn.
And we'll
Anybody?
second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 We're adjourned.
Look where they stand up front. For all the-
8 o'clock.